I'll introduce you to our two speakers, Eileen Marchant and Sue Wilkinson from the Association for PE. Thank you both very much, ladies, for agreeing to do the session today. As you can see, it's very, very popular. And what Sue and Eileen don't know about this subject area, well, we don't, there's, it isn't worth knowing really. So thank you very much, Sue and Eileen, from afPEYST, and Simon for your support for presenting today. As I say, if you can turn your mutes and phones off, that's fantastic. So over to you two girls. Thank you very much.
Afternoon, everybody. I'm Sue Wilkinson. I'm the CEO of afPEYST, and I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Eileen Marchant, who's one of our lead consultants, and we both work directly to the DFE on the primary P and Sport Premium. So before we start, can you just put in the chat one word, an adjective that describes how you feel today? Just one word.
Whilst you're putting that word in, I'll just say good afternoon, everybody, and it's lovely to be here, but I'm going to switch off my camera now because the sound on my laptop's a bit dodgy if I have my camera on, so you'll just have to hear me but not see me. So good afternoon, everybody, and I'm going off camera.
The reason why I asked was we were in the office on Monday, and obviously we support a phenomenal amount of members wider than just on the subject. And all of our members are all positive as you are. You've done an unbelievable job, but they are all exhausted, demotivated, tired, overworked. And it's really important that whatever we do going forward, we stay positive, but we make life easier for you. And somebody's just put there, Nisha, was it Nisha? No, Josh, hopeful. We've got to be, we have got to be. And I'm delighted, Andrew, you feel good. That is great news. But people are exhausted because our board member who works in a secondary school, she said, everybody thinks we're back to normal and we're not. So it's really important that we get this right. So Simon, could I have the next slide, please? Okay, so the purpose of what they want to do today is all listed there for you. This is what Jane and Sam have asked us to do. I want you to tick off the things that you think we've got right and we're doing. And then at the end, if there's any gaps, please feel free to ask us questions or give them to Jane and she'll email us afterwards. But it's absolutely critical. The two areas I would like you to focus on today is sustainability and positivity. Because what we're going to try and do is support your way through this. And there are things to be positive about, we hope. Okay, so what? So the next slide, Simon. So if we do all of these things, so what? What are you going to go away with tonight? What we're hoping is you'll have some of the tools to have a 3-year vision. And we know 3 years is one of the best ways to plan. How you've coped with the constant annual, have we got this money, have we not got this money? We just don't know. The 3 years are absolutely critical.
Volunteers find it really hard, don't they?
Because I've got a bit of kickback there. Is that you, Jane? Sorry, got some kickback here, sorry. So the 3 years will tie in with your whole in school improvement plan. There is a new research document going to be published by Ofsted at the end of October, beginning of November. And so this will all tie into any potential deep dives or any tweaks to the education inspection framework going forward. Also, it's critical that you stay with the 5 key indicators. We are going to update you on potential tweaks that are coming over the hill. Your national curriculum is your statutory entitlement. That is not going to change, although it might be reframed. And then the most important is the impact. Because if we are to get further funding, there will be an accountability streamline. Okay, next one, please, Simon. So what we'd like to do is, we can't do a poll because we've got technical hitch. Can you just put in the chat, have you got a sustainability program in mind? And is it going to make a difference? Yes or no? Just one word, yes or no. And what Sam's going to do is just see how that changes. You can change your mind as you're going through. So it gives us some kind of gauge as to where we're going with this. And now I'm going to hand over to Eileen, who's going to take you through about how the outcomes will make a difference.
Yeah, we keep using that word sustainable, don't we? It's so important because we know this funding won't go on forever. And so it's so important, whatever the plans are. There are so many yeses coming up on the screen, which is superb. Okay, Simon, next slide, please. So what outcomes for children and young people do we really want to see, irrespective of funding, obviously this is an entitlement, and all children and young people should experience a great breadth of PE and sport and physical activity, and it should lead them into a better preparation for a future relationship, because they build on what they do in school with what they go on to do outside school. So it's so important that we give them that really good experience. Lots of breadth in there so that there's something in there for everyone. Teachers should also focus on helping children and young people to feel good about themselves, feel confident, feel capable, actually encourage their abilities. It's really, really important that, and Sue's used the word positive so much so far, so important we give young people a really positive feel about PE. Improve confidence and attitude in teachers. We keep saying teachers need to feel confident if they're going to teach well. Teaching and learning is so crucial if we're really going to achieve what we want to achieve. And we don't want children leaving school feeling that they hated PE and that they really didn't like it. We want young people to leave school feeling really positive about the PE that they've done, because if they do, there's that word again, that sustained positive change and in the status of PE, sport and physical activity throughout the school. So crucial bit is teaching and learning. Teachers that are confident and give young people a really confident feel about themselves. Anything you want to add, Sue?
No, I'm absolutely fine, Al, thank you.
Okay, well, we'll move on to the next slide then, please, Simon. Well, we'll all be pretty familiar with this by now, these 3 I's. I think Sue said that she really had a lot of the 3 I's. What are you intending to do? How are you going to do it? And what impact? Says it all, doesn't it? And I know that this is basically the Ofsted framework, which has been slightly bent to meet the needs of PE, but it's exactly the same. We've got to be very clear what our intention is. What do we want to get out of this PE and sport premium? How is it going to link into the national curriculum? You know, about the curriculum, and this is where Amanda Spielman has been so good. She does not want people buying in curriculums. She is so clear that Ofsted want you to develop your own curriculum in consultation with the young people, in consultation with other staff, that is appropriate for your school, not to buy a ready-made curriculum. Absolutely clear on that. Implementation. It's so important that when you are looking at the spending, your premium spending, that you're clear how you're going to do it and how much it's going to cost. And then finally, that impact. So important. What are you expecting the change to occur as a result of all the things you put in place because of the funding that you've got knitted in to the national curriculum as well? I'll leave the other bit, behaviour and attitudes, personal development, leadership and management, except to say leadership and management is crucial if we're really going to have that vision that's going to take over 3 years, as Sue talked about that planning. Leadership and management is crucial in developing teaching and learning, and then they have that impact on young people. Sue, anything more?
No, I'm fine, thank you. Next slide, please, Simon. Now, whether we like it or not, we know schools recognise the Ofsted logo and the DFE, and they take notice for obvious reasons, because judgments are made about them. But what we've had to come up with is a set of national priorities collectively. So there are many agencies working together on this, and I'm delighted that Active Partnerships are key partners in this. But also DFE civil servants, DCMS and the Department of Health. But as a result, afPE formed its own task force because we did feel that PE was starting to get lost in favour of sport and physical activity, and we'll come on to that later on. So what we wanted to do was reframe it. And I've been in many meetings. I was interviewed by Nick Gibb with Edward Timpson just before the summer. And although he's gone, there is a commitment within government to PE as a curriculum subject. It's that entitlement. So it may be reframed, it may be tweaked, but what you have got, and Eileen will come on to it later, are 4 clear aims. The amount of times I'm asked, why isn't physical activity in the national curriculum? It's the 4th aim. And sometimes we just need to go back and have a look when we're prioritising how we're going to spend. because what is absolutely key, you are the bedrock. Your creativity, your positivity, your innovation through COVID shows that the workforce are the bedrock. You know, all sorts of things happen, but children never remember those. They remember the teacher who taught them. So for us, for afPEY, the workforce are key. And you may have seen that DCMS released a sort of political statement from the party conference saying about tennis courts and the 30 million. That was a reaffirmation of a manifesto commitment, and that is in the School Sport and Physical Activity Action Plan. But no, we had lots of questions about, are we having a sport curriculum? No, it just happened. DCMS did a press release from the government's local, you know, the big local, the big party manifesto, sorry. So that 30 million will be with DFE to look at supporting primary PE and to look at teacher training. So you're not sort of losing PE in favour of sport. So just to explode that myth, but it's investment in the workforce. We've also got to look at all the other opportunities, such as whether we work with secondary colleagues who are funded through the teacher training programme for transition. But what is really, really critical going forward is an accountability map. And it's not to create more work, but that is to use that impact column to show how you've been accountable for spend. Because what has come out during COVID is that some of the money has been spent inappropriately or spent on things outside of the ring funds piece for sport and physical activity. And then the other thing we're looking at is we're using research informed practice. So actually what you're doing in the classroom, we took the research from the classroom teachers, and also Joe Harris has looked worldwide for us at the types of research that so impact when any money is invested into PE. And you will not be surprised to see that it's the impact of the workforce, not resources or facilities, that make a difference. Is there anything you want to add to that, Isle?
I think that leads nicely into the next slide, actually, Sue. The next slide. Now, this slide, this picture I found in Australia, of all places, and I remember reading Sue saying, I found a slide that absolutely reinforces everything we've said about PE, school sport and physical activity. Because to be fair, for the last 2 decades, we have had incredible funding. We had the PESSPA strategy, and then for the last 7 years, there's been the PESSPA sport premium funding. But, you know, it doesn't matter how much we throw at it, if we don't know how to use it, it'll never be enough. And so that is why it's that word sustainable, that word, you know, making sure the workforce is competent and confident is so important, because the money can come pouring in, but if we don't use it properly, it will be a waste of time. So sustainability, that is the key throughout the whole of this webinar. Anything you want to add to that, Sue?
No, that's fine. Thank you. Simon, can I have the next slide? And there's a big clue on this. It's caveat, okay, post comprehensive spending review. We can only tell you what's happening at this moment in time. The comprehensive spending review is due out in and around October the 27th. So for many of us, we may well be on that annual leave, but it is important we keep an eye on that. And I know Jane and Sam certainly will be. But what we've got at the moment is a positive commitment. They have announced, government have announced pre-DC comprehensive spending review that money is there. There's been that reaffirmation of 30 million. So what we are hoping for is a long-term commitment. So for example, 3 years would be ideal. But if the money doesn't come for 3 years and we only get another year, or we don't get anything at all, you still have to have something that is a vision for 3 years for these children and young people. That is really important. We are positive and we're hopeful that we'll get some long-term investment. But at this moment in time, you've still got your carryover. You've still got to report now on July 2022. One of the issues that is a challenge is the swimming. Now, there's no blame here. You can't teach children to swim when you're at home, and you can't teach children to swim if no swimming pools are open. So there's no blame here. Be as honest as you can. But what is key is it'd be really helpful if there was some kind of swimming passport, even if it's done retrospectively, sent to your secondary schools to say 85% of our children cannot swim. Now, can you imagine if you said 85% of our children cannot read? So the more evidence we've got, the more likely we are to have investment to support this, because this is a life skill. This is absolutely critical, and through no one's fault other than a pandemic, children are leaving primary school unable to swim or even access swimming lessons, either for socioeconomic reasons or just there's no space in the pool. So be honest in your reporting, because going forward we think it's really important, and try if you can and pass some information over to your secondary colleagues and say, is there anything you can do here? Is there any underspend you've got in your secondary teacher training program so you can help that transition? The one thing you need to be accountable for, and we know in some cases it's too late, you can't put the money into a capital spend. You need to legally comply and follow the DfE guidance. Eileen and I have long discussions about this, that, where we knew there was underspend and it was going to be clawed away, which it shouldn't be, but where there was a threat of it being called back, we were saying we'd rather it be spent on something like, a new playground, piece of equipment or something, but it is capital spend. And if a fence blows down in the playground and you use it to put it back up, where's the sustainability strategy next winter if it blows down again? So those are sort of questions. We don't know who will be looking at the accountability yet, but I know DfE are very focused on looking at an accountability strand. Okay, Simon, could I have the next slide, please? And then this is
me, isn't? Oh no, sorry, Sue.
And this is important here, because what we need to look at are these key indicators. Now, at the moment, they are as they are, but they could possibly be tweaked. Ourselves and YST have had a meeting with DfE, and they did ask, do we need to tweak them? And we actually felt, collectively and consistently, that they're all pretty good and everybody's quite happy with them. But perhaps, and it was something Eileen raised, the fourth bullet point about a broader experience of a range of sports. Yes, you have to have a broad and balanced curriculum, but it'd be better maybe to do less, better at this moment in time with all the restrictions you're facing. But what we have to do is embrace an activity programme that will include all young people. Now, we've just finished what's called Studio U for Sport England, because many secondary girls were actually switched off with the contents of their PE curriculum. So there's some obscure activities in there that have worked really well. But you are brave and you are innovative. And if you want to introduce a brand new activity like Quidditch, pole dancing, I'm really not bothered, and nor is Eileen, as long as it gets those children to meet the outcomes of the national curriculum, to be competent and confident, and to be able to be competitive and to be able to lead healthy, active lifestyles. You can teach whatever you want. There isn't any restriction on that, as long as you meet the outcomes of the national curriculum. What is a challenge for you for all the schools? We've spoken to some of our school games organisers members. It's a real challenge at the moment, competitive sport. We know in the Midlands there's a lot of schools having to go back to mass working and social distancing, but we can still do competition against the self until competition face-to-face is back. And don't forget, you can all do your competition against each other in schools, in your own school. That's not an issue. It's only at the moment when you're having to travel and visit other schools. And who knows where we're going to go with that. Eileen, is there anything else you want to add to that?
Other than to say that I am convinced that if Sue is involved in doing the next national curriculum, lap dancing will be in the pole dancing. Pole dancing will be in the programme of study. She's determined to get people doing pole dancing. Not lap dancing, that's a little bit step too far, but pole dancing is definitely on.
I tell you what it was, I watched some children who were quite overweight, and they were using the pole to support them rather than, and they absolutely loved it, really loved it. So that's why I threw that example in, but it certainly isn't lap dancing.
No, sorry, it was a bit step too far, that's it.
Right, I'm going to pass over now to you, Eileen, to talk about the top tips.
All right, just before, could you move on to the next slide, Simon? But just before we actually say anything about these, how are we doing with the poll? Have you been counting up the yeses and the nos for about sustainability?
I have indeed. I think we've got about 8 responses for yes and about 2 responses for no, and 2 were unsure as well. So if my mental maths is correct, which it might not be, I'd say that's about 66% of people said yes, and about 34% said no or unsure, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, oh, that's fairly positive. That's good. You can still keep adding to that. You might have changed your mind, or you might want to add a little bit more, but please do keep adding. Right, top tips. Yes, we put these together last term, actually, during sort of the uncertainty of what was going on in schools. Obviously, you can see from the slide at the top that it was active partnerships, obviously afPEYST and the Youth Sport Trust, but the one important factor was they were endorsed by the Department for Education, and that always gives them that little bit of extra credibility. So looking at them, some of the narrative, because obviously we're now in October, in the autumn term, some of the narrative is slightly out of date, but to be fair, they're still very pertinent. We had a long discussion about the first one, PE, sport, physical activity and play. We were concerned about the and play, but we actually agreed that play could be included as long as it was effectively physical rather than sedentary play. So that was one thing that came in, and we want to ensure that the funding is spent fairly freely across all of these: PE, sport, physical activity and play. Considering it when you are investing in these areas, consider investing in resources and programs, memberships of professional organisations, membership organisations. Make sure that you do baseline, because you need to baseline what you're doing in your school currently to know where you're going to move on to. And it's also important that when you're talking about what you want to implement and what knowledge you want to impart, that you do involve pupils, other staff, that the subject leader is always involved, and obviously parents possibly. And if you use coaches to work alongside teachers, they should be involved as well. Development of the whole child. We have, long before the PE and sport premium was talked about, we in afPEYST have talked so much about the crucial role that physical education plays in development of the whole child. And physical literacy is something that's bandied about, but how many people really know what physical literacy is? If you want to put that in the chat box, your views on physical literature, please feel free to do so. But how well is it understood, the concept of physical literacy within your school? And what's its contribution to the whole child? We all know, those of us that are passionate about PE and sport, we all know that if we feel good about ourselves, that impacts right across other areas of the curriculum. All those wider skills that we can develop through physical education, school sport and physical activity. And it's so important when developing the whole child. We go into schools that are truly put PE at the heart of the curriculum, and they see their results absolutely fly as a result, because it translates right across the other subjects as well. And that sort of leads nicely into whole school improvement. So when you look at a whole school improvement plan, try to identify specific areas where PE, school sport and physical activity actually positively impact on certain pupils, targeted groups of pupils, and what difference are the outcomes for those pupils as a result of high quality PE. It's so important, that we look at active maths or active phonics or cross-curricular activities or orienteering, all those things that you can do, which is physical, but it's developing those wider areas. So whole school improvement is a crucial part. Well, PE is a crucial part to whole school improvement. Outdoor learning really has taken off during last year, because it obviously was much safer to be outside than inside when schools gradually started to emerge from the lockdown. And so consider, when you're looking at the physical environment, while you've still got money, considering what your aim is to create a playground that's exciting and stimulating and inclusive. You can't create a playground because that's capital spend, but you consider what you're going to do in that playground to make it a really challenging and exciting environment for young people. Outdoor learning, we've talked about outdoor learning. Active travel. This has been, I think, and it might be me being a little bit naive, but since schools went back in September, sort of almost back into normality. I believe there are more people currently walking to school than they did before the pandemic, which seems like forever ago, doesn't it? But it's so important that we encourage children to travel to school on bikes, on scooters, walking. There is a suggestion in the top tips that you should perhaps create facilities where bikes and scooters and so on can be stored. I always have to sort of have a little bit of a dig about the walk to school week that schools often employ. Why don't we have a walk to school for 39 weeks and then have 1 week off rather than just have a walk to school week? But certainly encourage through providing places to leave bikes and scooters, certainly provide an environment which makes it easier for children to actively travel rather than get delivered by car. So you're on the next few. Is there anything you want to add to what I've said about the first 5?
No, that's absolutely fine. Thank you, Al. The ensuring high quality PE provision is a statutory entitlement of every child, whether or not we've got the premium. So that's really important, and we should have 3-year plans. But what they're saying, and we all agreed with the top tips, was the workforce is key. So should we be really investing in them? Because if there isn't any money, the only people left standing are those teachers in school. And they are critical because they can appreciate the physical, emotional, social and cognitive development because they see them across a plethora of subjects. So it's really important that if you've got an underspend, then use that and look for CPD opportunities, but also look for time to buy the subject leader out so they can go and review and have a look and see where colleagues need support. Staff turnover has been quite rapid this last 18 months. Have you got new colleagues in there that have something else to offer? Do they understand the contribution of PE? Can they advocate? Seek alternative ways.
Lost you, Sue.
No?
Are you?
No. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yes.
Oh yeah, sorry. Can we create things that we can do with parents and bring them in to promote and say to them how important their PE is? Because we know every head and a parent wants their children physically and emotionally and socially well. Well, in that case, let's have PE front and central. So in terms of innovation, we've seen through that lockdown, lots of practitioners be so creative and innovative. Don't lose that. You're absolutely brilliant at it. So can you shape your curriculum so it's different and reframed and everything's inclusive? You know, can you do a lot more on online? So when children get home, you can remind them what they've done in PE and keep that momentum going. Then we've got swimming, which we've talked about, but it's important if you can get a slot, how you actually facilitate that. Can you have a suspended curriculum for a week and take those children swimming? Can you actually split the money up and say, right, this is the statutory entitlement for all, whichever year you choose to go, or whether you choose a whole key stage, but we're going to keep some of that underspend to top up those children who are nowhere near achieving. Do you want to share with some of it with your secondary colleagues? You've got 5 of our children coming who are just not confident and won't even get in the pool. So it's really important that we look at how we can use that funding to be creative in order to get all of those children as close to that national curriculum requirement as we can, because it's been quite difficult. And do look on the websites because there's some phenomenal free resources on Swim England, on the RLSS, on Canals and River Trust, because the one key area is the safe self-rescue. And can you look at doing that? I think, Jane, some of your colleagues have done that with us, and I know you were working with Sue Trotman as well. You can do safe self-rescue actually in the hall or anywhere you've got on dry land. Now, we wouldn't want that to replace, because if you test and learn and they can't safe self-rescue, there's an issue. But it starts to embed, you know, what you have to get your children to do to understand and then be able to perform a safe self-rescue. So it's really important you try and use that underspend to top up that swimming. And then competition. Again, this is slightly out of date because it sort of talks about sports days and everything. And it talked about, you know, looking at school competition and getting people to clubs through the funds that were available for the summer. But the principles are still the same here, that actually we do need to reframe competition. whilst we've still got the challenges? What can you do differently so children and young people can still experience competition? Can you work with the school games organisers to say, we're not actually able to travel at the minute, we can't go to these schools, what can we do on site? And get lots of ideas off there, off the hub as well. And then last but not least, it's the transition. Now, this is the one that's sort of out of date because we wanted colleagues to look at this before schools left. But having spoken to the DFE, they don't mind if it's retrospective. What can you offer your secondary schools? Have they still got some of their secondary teacher training program that they can come and look at how they can do swimming for their year 7s? And some of their year 8s will also be lagging behind. Can you bring any pressure to bear? Have you given them the statistics? Could you buy yourself out for some time to actually look at that and send them over so they've got accurate reporting so they can go to their heads and say, we've got year 7 and 8 who can't swim here. And what are your plans for getting this year's 6 through who probably won't have experienced, well, they definitely won't have experienced any PE in year 5. So it's really important that we look at the top tips and try and use some of them in the underspend. And they're not the only ones. We had 7 and then it went to 10 and it could have been as long as an Andrex toilet roll. So these aren't the only ones. There are loads more, but these were the top 10 that we came up with as the 3 organisations. Arlie, is there anything you want to add to that one?
Yeah, the swimming one, I don't know whether you want to mention on the 29th of November, Swim England have got their day conference.
Yeah.
Which is presumably on their website. I noticed it was in my diary, so that would be something perhaps to look at. And I know transition or preparation for transition could start now, couldn't it, ready for next year? It's working closely with those schools that your young people are going to go to.
And I think it'd be lovely if every child had a PE passport.
Absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
this accountability, what we've seen pre-COVID was that primary school PE was on a positive trajectory. And some of them were coming to secondary school and hitting a glass wall. And I think it's really important you retain that momentum because you've done a brilliant job with this. But we need our young people to be engaged in secondary schools as well. So over to you. It's a good lead into the national curriculum, Eileen.
It's a good lead into the national curriculum. Next slide, please, Simon. The national curriculum. I'm not going to ask anybody to put a note on the chat line, but so many people, and it's been going since 2014 now, the national curriculum. We can't call it the new national curriculum anymore. But so many teachers never even look at the aims of the national curriculum. They go straight to the programmes of study. And those 4 aims are so important and so linked to the 5 key indicators. They could almost be, they're in the same language. And that's what we talked about, knitting them together. The primary P and sport premium does not belong in one silo and the national curriculum in another. But if you look at those 4 aims, it's about developing competence to excel in a broad range of activities. It's about being physically active for lengthy periods, engaging in competitive sports. And if children get good experience in those 3 aims, they will go on to lead healthy, active lives. Now, those 4 aims are what you deliver through the programmes of study. But so often we focus so much on the content of the activity, we forget about what we're trying to deliver in terms of the national curriculum. And as I say, look at that broad range of activities, broad range, physically active, competitive, lead healthy, active lives. They're all in the key indicators. So they should be knitting together because it's about the profile of PE and that contribution to whole school improvement. The purpose at the bottom, again, with those very, very important words underlined, that's our reason for being. We should have that up in every single changing room or classroom. This is what PE is all about. This is what we're about. And again, it links so well into the expectations within the PE and sport premium funding. But please do look at those 4 key aims. Look at your curriculum planning, look at what you're delivering in terms of the different areas of activity, and are you actually achieving those aims through those different areas of activity? So, those little figures on the bottom are key. That's key indicator 4 at the top, key indicator 1 on the second one, key indicator 5 on the 4th one, and key indicator 1 on the bottom one. That's what those little things mean at the end. So,
and if you get all of those right, you will hit the indicator about whole school improvement. And then they won't happen unless you've got, you know, a highly skilled workforce. But those words that are underlined, use them. There's your narrative, if you like, to fill in your impact statements. So, you know, that leads us nicely into ensuring sustainability. I'm going to speed up a little bit so we're not late and you've got time for your questions. So
right,
Simon, can I have the next slide, please? Because if we are to ensure sustainability, we need to have consistent meanings. We need that united voice. And when you have a deep dive and they talk to your governor or your head or your senior leaders, you are all leaders. And this is key here. You should all be singing from the same hymn sheet. So that shared vision is absolutely key. Because if we have a commitment to ensure this funding focuses on outcomes for children and young people, you have got a real script for any Ofsted inspector who knocks that door. Because you can say, this is the difference we've made. This was our vision. Here's our raison d'etre, which is our aims and purpose of the national curriculum. That's the why. Your programs of study is the how, and the what is entirely up to you. What you deliver to meet those other two is your call, because you're professionals. It's your judgment. To go into the second one, just to help you, if you may want to perhaps share this and test your governors and so on. Next slide, please, Simon. You can, you know, test the head teacher, test college. Do you know the difference between PE, sport and physical activity? I got into a massive spat. I tell you, I was like Rumpelstiltskin when somebody said to me, I won't tell you the organisation, but they said to me, oh, it's all the same. Ministers, it's all the same words. No, it is not. It is a bit like putting a gold roof on a house that's built on sand. It might look good for the first 30 seconds, but then it will sink. Because children, in order to be physically, emotionally, socially well, have to be physically competent, because that impacts on the left and right side of the brain, on motor development, on actual academic performance. So that's the planned movement bit within the curriculum. Then you can build from that foundation excellent opportunities for school sport and physical activity. And then hopefully if they like that, they will keep on that in the community as well. Is there anything you want to add to that, Al? Because I think what is clear is we've got to convince parents as well, and government, as we go through this with the national curriculum.
It is important that we do understand the difference between the three, because we've been concerned, particularly during the last 18 months, that physical activity would edge out physical education. That if kids were active, it would effectively edge physical education out. But fortunately, that doesn't seem to be happening at the moment. Okay, next slide, please, Simon. That leads us nicely. When the 2014 curriculum came out and we got rid of levels, thank God, because we should never have had levels in PE ever. And I want to sort of acknowledge that Andy Frapwell did an awful lot of this work with regard to the head, hands and heart. He talked about the head being the thinking bit, the hands obviously the doing bit, because that's crucial in PE, and the heart, the behavioural change. And of course we want, within our PE programme, we want young people to be physically competent. We want them to grow and develop naturally and to be physically active and to be competitive. That embraces what the physical education curriculum is about. But additionally, we want these young people to be able to make their own decisions, be able to analyse what they're doing, understand why they're doing it, and to be confident in what they're doing, and then to go on to be creative. But I always say that the most important bit is this third one, that behavioural change, physical being, because this is what we're all about. As a result of the first two, of course, we want young people to be active and engaged and involved and excited by PE, want them to grow socially and emotionally and to build their characters and their values. But then that important last line, to go on to lead a healthy, active lifestyle. That is only the top half of a poster that afPE created. If you want the whole one, it's on the website. And on the other side, there is the progress through the levels of attainment. We are not the levels, the end of key stage attainment. We don't want teachers to be assessing every activity. This is a best fit view at the end of the key stage or at the end of the year. Are they competent? Have they got ability to think? And do they want to go on to be physically active? Any more, Sue?
No, that's absolutely fine. Could I have the next slide for Eileen's, please, Simon?
Yes, now this was a leaflet that was put together for parents. It was developed, or at the right-hand side, the 5 facts were very much developed by Dr. Jo Harris. I think she's professor now, isn't she?
Yes.
Jo Harris from Loughborough. But one of the bit on the left-hand side, that was actually done by pupils. When we asked them what they felt about PE in their school and how they felt about it, they talked about being more productive, more enterprising, more successful, and it was vibrant, positive, outstanding. All of these words are the words from the pupils themselves. Now, the bit on the right, that Jo undertook the research, and it was really solid evidence-based research. Fact 1, if the PE is good, achievement, pupils improve in all subjects, because they don't walk out of the hall or off the playground or off the field feeling good about themselves and then not continue into their next lesson. Personal development, pupils are much more confident and positive. They develop social skills. We know PE is the ideal of PE, sport, physical activity, the ideal vehicle for developing social skills. That fact 4, so important at the moment, isn't it? Health and emotional well-being. And if the PE, school sport, physical activity is good, they'll have a much better outlook on life, as we all do when we've done something, haven't we? We've been at the gym, we've been out for a walk, we all feel better. So should pupils. Fact 5, leadership. That's back to that thinking, physical being. Pupils are able to make their own informed decisions. Those 5 facts are based on solid evidence-based research. It was a leaflet that was developed for parents. Anything more, Sue?
Yeah, I mean, thank you. It's just that this was 2016, and it's really, really important because 5 years down the line, we're still saying the same thing. And you know, those facts, research has grown, but they're still the same things. Where, you know, Jo's on our board now and leading on the task force on this, and she said we doesn't need changing. But what you could do is use some of your underspend to design, because whilst it's nationally led, it has to be locally grown by you, because your communities could be different to Cornwall's or Cumbria. So could you create something? Could your children create a poster? You know, afPEYST would be really good, really happy to support that and give a prize to the best poster that describes their PESSPA experience. And it just starts to engage the parents as well. I'm conscious of time. So Simon, could you just put on the next slide for me? Because this really is an aid memoir for you. These are questions that you can ask based around those 3 I's. And why we've used them is we think it's important that you don't have to take on new language, new terms, that this is a consistent review that you can use across anything from talking to parents, talking to children and young people themselves, presenting at your governors meeting, you know, presenting to your peers and your networks, and of course with Ofsted. But you do need to celebrate what you've done well, because we're really bad at that, teachers. And it's important you say, you know, as a result of what we have done, look at the difference it's made to our children's lives. But also there'll be areas for development, with swimming being a typical one. And then you can actually use your investment into the key indicators where you feel you might not have got it right. And you can still continue to invest where you have got it right as well. But make sure you've got that accountability line in there and the impact. And then we'll keep you up to date with the different templates. Eileen's just going to take you through quickly now the tweaks that have been made on the templates.
Next slide, please, Simon. Yeah, very, very quickly. It's virtually not changed at all, to be fair. But honestly, we changed it 10 times during that summer term because the advice coming out was different all the time. But basically, it says you can carry, well, it's obviously happened, all funding that hadn't been spent can be carried over to this year. So that's the basic main change, because originally you were supposed to spend some of it by last July, weren't you? So move on, Simon, and we'll just very quickly.
Sorry, can I just say, make sure you've got the right template. It does have the July 21. That's the most up-to-date one.
Yeah, sorry, July 21, I should have said that. Another thing as well, even though it wasn't endorsed by the DFE, it was commissioned by the DFE. And we do recommend, nobody has to use it, but we recommend that this is the one you use because it guides you through the process. And it's a process that is continuous and ongoing. So many schools leave it till the last minute to start filling it in. It should be a working document, and it should be used continuously and be ongoing. Again, back to those, it's 4 columns, very clear back to what you're intending to do. You've got to be focused and be clear on what you want your pupils to know and be able to do, or what they need to consolidate through practice. And then how are you going to do it? That column there is all about how are you going to ensure that your pupils know and be able to do more, or whatever. How are you going to do it, and how much is it going to cost? That's when you start sort of looking at how much it's costing, how much you've got left, and so on and so forth. But then most importantly, what can the pupils know and do as a result of the actions that you were intending to take? It might be upskilling staff. Well, the impact is not about better knowledgeable staff. The impact is that as a result of those better knowledgeable staff, the pupils know, understand, and can do a lot more. And make sure you've got clear evidence in that column that it has changed. So you know they've improved, but how do you know? What evidence have you got? That final column, we talked about sustainability all the way through this. How are you going to ensure that the changes you've made as a result of the funding, how are they going to be sustained when the funding is no more? Okay, Sue?
Yeah, lovely. Thank you very much. I mean, I think what's important as well in our quality mark, the column that everyone finds most difficult is the impact. We see X has gone on so many courses, you know, we've increased the curriculum time. It's the question the panel always asks is the so what? What is great to see is when people fill in that impact when they say, and as a result, and it's quantitative and qualitative data. And don't forget your professional judgment is absolutely vital in there. It doesn't have to all be number driven. You can say 70% of children's behaviours has improved as a result of teachers going on professional development to do with playground management or something, or you can actually talk about children are happier, and that's a professional judgment because you know your children better than anyone. So mix and match your qualitative and your quantitative data in there. And this is a quick sort of aid memoir for you really that you can tick off, but again and again we keep saying your significant achievements, please celebrate them and be honest about the areas for development, because that shows there is a constant review there. It is an ongoing tool, and I know we get very frustrated when colleagues have got 72 hours, can you help me fill this in? What is great is when people email them to us and say, look, I've got lots of crossings out. Well, that shows it's a real ongoing tool. It's a live document. It's almost your review tool that we've tried this and it didn't work, or we've tried this and it was so successful, we're going to extend it. So use it as that live document. And also the investment for your staff is key. I can't labour that point enough. There is a really good set of government guidance on capital spend. I know colleagues find that quite a challenging document to get your head around, but it does relate to what your bursaries allow you to spend on capital as well. So do have a look at that, and I'm sure Jane will be able to help. And then raise the profile by your advocacy. Get everyone to understand the difference between PE, sport and physical activity, to able to articulate what it contributes to physical, emotional, social, and the impact on cognitive development, because that's absolutely key. And I'll tell you why. Can I have the next slide, please, Simon? And that's because I saw this quote by Maureen, and how true is it? You know, teachers seem to be the Swiss Army knife of societal ills. You cannot be used to solve everything. You are not the silver bullet. You are there to educate and inspire learning. And we only get them for 15%. But what you can do is be part of the solution by upskilling and creating greater knowledge with parents, carers, and the community. Is there anything you want to add to that, Isle?
Yeah, I think don't get hung up on doing loads and loads and loads and loads. Look at what you want to provide and then look at the impact that's having, because you can say, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm doing the other, I'm doing, and you say, well, so what? What impact is it having? You know, you might say, I've got 1,000 children coming to after school activities. So what? What impact is it having on them? Don't get hung up with counting numbers. Right, that was also.
No, thank you. And can we have the next slide? This is sort of the cycle of advocacy. you are influencers. You know, you can't change the game at home, but you can influence parents' views. And you know, children, when they're in your ear constantly going on, we did this, it was really great to school, I want to do more of this at home. Eventually we can get through to those parents who are not lovers of physical education, physical activity or sport. So you will create change there through how you implement what you do, and then you evidence your impact, and then it starts again. So you are the great advocates for the subject, and that is with other colleagues in your school, with your senior leadership team, with your governors, but also with the children and young people. And if you can get them to share with their parents, carers, grandparents and community, then we will actually grow this activity movement. Because pre-COVID, we still had children inactive, we still had obesity challenges, and we still had body image problems as well. That didn't change with COVID, it just brought it to the forefront. And the next slide I'd like to share, because I think every one of you ought to put this on your wall, because pre-COVID, yes, we had challenges and the pencil might have got blunt, but when it all broke, and none of us knew, we didn't have a mentor, we didn't have a blueprint, there wasn't a book written on how to manage a pandemic. What you did was turn it around into a positive through creativity, through innovation, through your professionalism. So actually, I hate the word catch up, I really do, and recovery. This is about young people who are a unique generation, but more importantly, the workforce is unique, and you made it happen. And I am so sorry that many colleagues have left. But going forward, we need to be positive, because you turned a negative into a positive and you engage people, because we could have lost a lot more. And so in summary, if I can have the last slide, Si, this again is what we need to look at. It is uncomfortable change. We've all been to hell and back. But in order to have that legacy, that when the young people leave us, they are physically, emotionally, socially and cognitively well developed as far as we can get them, that is a measure of your success. Because we can't continue to repackage old stuff. We've got to do different things, and that shared vision is key. And I sort of speak a lot to this guy, Fabian Darku, and he said, you're absolutely right, it's about rejuvenation, not recovery, rejuvenation of what we do. And we've got to teach safely, and safely to protect you, not just the young people, because if we don't get that whole physical and emotional and social, then Simon will just share with you this DVD clip. It's called Adults Fail. I don't like the title, but we could have a generation in this situation. Simon, could you play the video for me, please? Oh. Do you know anybody socially or peers like any of these? And no, I didn't teach him, nor Eileen. And this is so true, that cognitive, fine and gross motor skills are really important, and we can actually influence adults' lives later on. But when you're 5, you don't think of that. But I'm sure you recognise quite a few of your relatives or friends on there who've not been privy to a good physical education curriculum. So thank you for listening. If you've got any questions, Eileen and I'll stay on and answer those for you.
Thank you from me too.
Well, we'll just wait to see if there's any questions come in, but on behalf of Sport Birmingham, on behalf of Sam and myself, I'd like to thank Simon for the IT support, Sue and Eileen. I found that really inspirational myself. You realise you're in such an important subject area. Fantastic updates, ladies, and as passionate as ever and as knowledgeable as ever you two are. and we really appreciate that we've got so much support from the Key National Agency for this area of work. So thank you all very much. As all of you know, in Birmingham, I do try and help schools. If you have any queries on the PE School Sport Premium funding, I'm here to support. So you've got my number and you've got my email address, so please give me a shout. And again, if I don't know the answers, Sue and Eileen are my go-tos if there's questions we can't answer between ourselves. So
there's a couple of really good ones here.
Go on then, Sue.
Yeah, Sonia's asked, does PE have to be taught by a qualified teacher? The law states that head teachers must put qualified teachers in front of children and young people to deliver. It can be supported, and it can be that head teachers can make a decision someone has the right experience and competence. The issue is when there's an accident or a fatality particularly. So it should always be taught by a qualified teacher, but then others, your teaching assistants and your HLTAs who are absolutely brilliant, your coaches, can actually be part of the support mechanism and teach elements from it. The most important thing is they have the appropriate confidence and competence, because that's what the judiciary bring to that. Eileen, do you want to bring any more? Because you sit and oversee as a JP. You know, it's all
I was trying to read the chat line and listen to you, so and I failed miserably at multitasking.
It's all in safe practice. A PE instructor, that's a bit of a new one on me, because we've got coaches who are appropriately qualified particular activities, and of course they can deliver on those. But the leadership has to come from a qualified teacher within the school. You know, that's just the way it is, I'm afraid. And obviously when academies came about and they said they didn't need qualified teachers, there was quite a few challenges around that legally. And then Joss has gone off topic, but he said, is there any, slightly off topic, but is there a need to evidence a topic across the term? I think it's something old hand and our school incorporated years, but I don't feel it positively impacts the children. It's more just the yeah, you know what, Josh, you're the professional here. If you don't feel it's having an impact, you know, there's got to be a whole school review here. You know, hopefully COVID will get senior leaders to look at the curriculum. You know, just because you've done it, you know, if you always do what you always do, you're always going to get what you've always got, is what we say. You've got to have that review. Does it have to be topic based? And if so, are we really being true pedagogists and educationists doing the same thing every year and every term when the children are different? So there's got to be that baseline in a review. You know, our children have come back. Where are they? Physically, emotionally, socially and cognitively, and let's build a curriculum around that for all subjects. You know, would be Eileen, would you?
Yeah, there's the bit about how many hours of PE on the class timetable should we realistically expect. We've talked that the 2 hours has been bandied around for the last 20 years, hasn't it? It's what you can realistically deliver the national curriculum. Obviously you've got to deliver the programs of study within, or the 4 key aims through the programs of study, and achieve the end of key stage attainment target. And time is not the essence always. It's because it's far better, we used to say it's far better to have an hour of quality than 2 hours of rubbish.
I was just going to say that, Eileen, we were still inspecting when we had the 5 hours, and the longer they got, the worse the lessons were. The evidence was quite clear. And I remember Crichton Casban, I was at QCA, said, look, and Mick Waters, we've got to have an hour of quality as opposed to 2 hours. And we deployed Eileen down to London. The head asked them to go and have a look. 2 hours, half an hour getting changed. And she's saying reception change quicker than this. So you've got to have a look what you can deliver realistically, which doesn't help if you're trying to protect your time. But, you know, I would say I would like to see 2 hours of quality. And I know people do 3 hours of quality, some do 1 hour of quality, but I would like to see how far they progress. But they will never give you a mandatory time. We have been to government, and remember, when we had 5 hours, it was an aspiration, which was, you know, wrapped up politically quite well. But, you know, 2 hours, I think you could deliver.
The longer you have, the slower the pace.
Yeah.
You know, the getting changed is more relaxed, and the pace of the lesson is much slower. So it's about, it's really, the pace starts the minute you say, let's get changed. And then you go from there, and it goes on until they actually put their last clothing on, ready for the next lesson.
Our quality mark schools usually on average, just looking at this, it's about 80 minutes a week, but some go up to 3 hours. But it's not many are less than 80 minutes. So that's 2 40-minute lessons, but that is sheer, you know, actively engaged.
Yeah, I was recently in a secondary school that did have a 2-hour period, but they did 2 different activities within that 2 hours. So it was like having 2 lessons, one after the other, really, which worked. And it did work well for them, to be fair. But that would not work for primary children.
Are there any final questions anyone would like to before we find that?
Why are children coming to school to change? Why do this? We totally support that. We think that one of the good things was come to school in your kit. We have got a school just local to me. We're in a 3-tier in Worcestershire. It's a first school, and the heads bought them all tracksuit top and bottom, because they go in them. If they get wet, they can strip them off, but they come school changed, and the difference it's made is quite incredible. We totally do it, primary and secondary's quite liked it as well, because they couldn't change or go in the changing rooms with a whole class, so it was easy for them to come change. I mean, the challenges you will get from parents was if they get absolutely soaked through, but it's not difficult, is it, to have spare change of clothes in school? So I totally agree. That's a great point. Well said, Martin.
Go for it.
Okay. Can I just say on behalf of afPEYST, thank you, Jane, and thank you for all the engagement and interaction. That's absolutely great. If anyone has burning questions, email them to Jane, and we'll respond to those for you, Jane.
Lovely. Well, again, thank you all very much. Thank you for everyone attending the webinar this afternoon. I hope you found it, as I have, inspirational and really helpful. So keep up the fantastic work, everyone, from your agencies, from schools to everything. We're in the most important subject area, we all know that, so keep shouting for this important area. Thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you for having us.
Bye.
Bye.